Philosophy in the arts. With this video we will not talk about what is art or theory of beauty or aesthetics, okay? I will not talk about the canons of art, but we will see how philosophy have informed art. So, art is a historical determinate product characterized by universal content. What makes it universal? The ideas it conveys and carries on through time. In this short presentation, our aim is not to explain what is philosophy of art or aesthetics, which deal with the theory of beauty. Neither we will define what is art or what is beauty, but we will try to show how some philosophical trends have traversed, informed, dwelled in the arts. We start with the poet. This painting of Ingress of 1827 shows the crowning of Homer as immortal. You see the Pantheon here, the Olympus, and Homer the poet has been admitted amongst the gods. The point is that somebody who has a special contact with the gods, and he acquires or he accesses knowledge that is transferred to the poetry to humanity. In the next image we have Laocoon. The Laocoon is this sculpture of the priest and his sons who are attacked by the snakes. Basically they are killed by the snakes. The snakes here are on the side of the Greeks, so Laocoon was supposed to know the secret of the Trojan horse, and he was killed because the snakes were with the Greeks. So the gods in this interpretation take sides, and once again the idea of the connection between the God's interpretation of an event or explanation of how the traitor of the Greeks is dealt with. Now we move on and we see this image of Apollo. Apollo is another Greek god. Is the god of prophecy, music, intellectual pursuit, healing, plagues, and well, what you have to notice is how he is represented. Is the god of reason, the god of serenity, harmony, beauty, music as equilibrium, balance. Now, immediately opposed to Apollos there is Dionysus, the god of wine, parties and festival, madness, drunkenness and pleasure. And the representation of Dionysus always present grapes. Often there is a goat, although he's a beautiful man, and he can be wearing a beard. Now the difference between Apollo and Dionysus is that he represents the dark side, or not the rational side of man, and he brought wine to humanity. And dance. Music is associated always with dance in Dionysus. And so in dance, the ego disappears. We lose ourselves. That's Dionysus. And later on he has also a different representation. There is always a tiger with him. And we have seen the opposition between Dionysus and Apollos, the reason and the irrational. And this is also the Greeks who have fought in the Greek tragedy with a kind of in the Greek tragedy Dionysus is kind of dominant, but then what happens? Apollon takes over because 6th century before Christ in the Greek time, there's a new way of understanding life and nature, and there's the start of first philosopher. The first philosopher is Thales. What is the shift happening here? The shift happening here, it's the use of reason to understand the world. The attention goes onto nature, what is the principle, the unique principle that underlies nature, reality. And this is the representation of the first philosopher, Thales. You also see here written in Greek, and as you see, he doesn't look into himself, he looks out into the world, represented here by this sphere. The muse kind of describing to Thales the world. So the reason, the logical reasoning that allow the observation that allows to have an understanding of the world. The theory of Thales that everything comes from water and everything is made of water. This image, quite recent, that we could describe as the bathing people who have a bath, right? Is actually can be read. One moment, there. The cycle of life. If you can see, there's a kind of progression from birth and growth to earth. Then the cycle starts again. So once again, arts expresses a philosophical idea, or try to. We could also briefly talk about Heraclitus, who had this image of the river in which you cannot enter twice, which means you cannot enter twice in the same water. The river is continuous flowing, so every time you enter into the river, you enter in new water, but the river itself is always there, so there is a contrast between flux and permanence. Everything is flowing, but at the same time there is an idea of permanence as well. Next, in this mosaic in Pompeii, let's see, make it bigger. We see Plato here, there, this is Plato, encircled by his pupils. Well, as we know, Plato wrote dialogues. For in this artistic representation, the philosophy is understood as a dialogue. Conversation, dialogue, is the moment of creation of the philosophical act. So philosophy has dialogue. It's clearly represented in this mosaic. Once again, another aspect of philosophy, an idea of philosophy, it's represented in art. Next, as we know, one of the main tenets, ideas of Plato's theory is that the world we live in is nothing else than a mirror of the real world. We actually, as raw humans, we actually don't see the world as it is, but we only see the shadows of this world. The human condition, it's a condition of chained people who do not see the reality, because they live in a cave and they're chained to the wall, and they can never move and get out of there, and they can only see the shadows of the real things that appear onto a wall. The chain in this case, of course, is not material, but it's mental. Let me show you this drawing in which maybe this idea it's represented a bit more simplistically and a bit more clearly. In fact, to the myth of the cavern, it's like this. It's like we are here, prisoners, chained, we can never move, and we look at this wall. This wall we see shadows. The shadows are produced by these puppeteers who move along this wall, objects, animals, whatever we see, and there's the fire who allows this to project the shadows onto the wall. So we don't see reality, we don't even see the mirror of reality, but the mirror of objects, the shadows of objects. Now, the process is that if we break the mental chains, we can ascend on the path to the light and see the real world. Okay? That's the philosopher path. So, once again, now, in the Renaissance, Raffaello made these beautiful paintings in which he represented the philosophers. Let's have a look at this painting. Basically, you could see here, allegedly, there are all the philosophers known up to his time, so up to the Renaissance, Rinascimento. But let's pay attention to this focus point of the painting. These two philosophers here are the focus, the center of focus of the whole painting. Besides, here you can see the pre-Socratics, and but the center are these two philosophers. These two philosophers are Plato and Aristotle. Plato has his hand with the index finger pointing to the sky, and that's his philosophy. His philosophy, as in the real world, it's a world which is not in front of your eyes. The real world, it's above. It's a kind of somewhere else. Okay, and Aristotle has his hand toward the ground, toward the earth, and is well planted onto the ground. So his realism, his attention to the common life, to understanding nature, to understanding the behavior of man. So a realistic view of the world. So once again, art trying to represent two opposite philosophical tenets. Now we move to Democritus, which, although is before, Democritus is an atomist, which he was the first to understand that reality is made of atoms. In a sense, he said, he logically reasoned to this, saying, if we can cut matter, we keep cutting, we reach a point in which the smallest part cannot be cut further. That's the atom. In Greek means uncut. Now, if you look at this picture, and apparently you see the shape of a woman. If we approach this image nearer and nearer, you'll see only dots. And these are the components of reality. We don't see the dots because we see reality from a certain distance. So we take a distance and we see an image. But if we go further and further, you only see dots. So the kind of this atomism you can decompose matter until you reach the unbreakable, uncut component. Once again, the art. Here, in this image, we have a completely different story. Seneca, the philosopher Seneca, and the emperor. Here, philosophy is understood as counseling. Seneca develops a new, taking from the Stoic philosophy of the founded by Chrysippus in Greece. He focuses onto the laws of life, so onto wisdom, onto live a good life, but in the right way. So here, the man, the emperor, is concerned, is worried, and the philosopher is counseling him, is giving a direction. The same for the emperor who was a philosopher, which is Marcus Aurelius. Marcus Aurelius, who taking from the Stoic teaching, states about what is man has to be concerned with, what is depends on him, and what does it depend on him is thought, not what be concerned with things that not depend on him, which are external to him. And also Marcus Aurelius stressed the necessity to live according to nature. Now nature has to be understood according to reason. So reason, it's the guide of man, not emotion. Okay, this Stoic position does not kill emotions or feelings, but suggest that to live properly, you have to follow reason and not emotion. And then we get into Epicure. Epicureanism has been misunderstood very often because it has been intended as a pure research of pleasure. In this painting, what do we see in this painting? We see lust, we see wine, grapes, we see pleasure, we see the goat. The goat is always present in this Bacchus. Dance, music. So it can be seen as a celebration of the senses, but also as a criticism. See, that's where you end up to if you follow Epicurean teachings. But this is a kind of distortion, because although Epicure stresses that pleasure is the ultimate good, pleasure is best secured through psychological and bodily equilibrium. No pleasure is a bad thing in itself, but things that produce a certain pleasure entail disturbances many times greater than the pleasures themselves. So there is a kind of difficulty a complexity. There is a complexity in the Epicurean positions. Although this differs from the Stoics, as in the Epicurean would reach aim at ataraxia, which is independence, completely independent from senses. Now, if we look at this painting, we find here this idea of the fall from a paradise. The apple here of the tree of knowledge is passed on to Adam by Eve, and transforms this just before. You see, he's not eating the apple yet. Just before that, this is paradise, where all kind of living beings coexist in a playful status, in a happy status, without killing each other, without the need of the suffering, and without the need of it. And this is the fall. So a primordial status of happiness from which we have fallen because of the bite into the apple so the original sin. Another idea which is connected to religion, but it's also a philosophical explanation of our condition of human sufferer. Now, in this picture, we see the representation of a kind of transfer of knowledge, a way of knowing and transfer knowledge. Here, St. Thomas, the father of the Catholic Church, the theologian and philosopher, the one who tried to introduce Aristotle into the Catholic belief, so to conciliate, to reconcile philosophy and theology. But the point that I'm trying to show here is that the way the teaching is done by reading and interpreting a text, okay, and commenting, and this is the way knowledge is done, okay, through text, through interpretation of the established text, which were the sacred text and the philosophy of Aristotle. But later, after the Middle Age, just after, with the humanism and the Renaissance, we have the birth, let's say, we have another approach to knowledge, and this is represented into the in this picture. As you can see, there is not just books. There are animals. There is an assistant. There is a globe. There is a cage with a. So there is plants. There is all a kind of nature world brought into this room of these scientists. We call it like that. So it's more an alchemist, let's say. He dares to dissect the animals to see exactly how the muscles and the nerves and the skeleton. So the dare to go beyond the allowed realm of knowledge. It starts a new way of. So art again represents a different approach to knowledge. Later, still Leonardo da Vinci. This is the Vitruvian Man. The Vitruvian Man is the expression of the macrocosm and microcosm are reflections of themselves, each other, which means the microcosm represented by man has respects the law proportion and complexity of functions, which are the same complexity that in the universe. So the macrocosm, the universe, is based on the equilibrium of its elements. But that's true. The same the same is true for the microcosm, which represents by man, which is an expression of proportion, and its structure is similar in complexity, its function similar in complexity, its beauty similar to the macro universe. So there is a mirroring. So what you know the microcosm, you know also the macrocosm, and vice versa. This kind of approach to harmony, proportion, and beauty as important element of knowledge, let's say, of aim of life, is also reflected in the cities, of the idea of the city. This image of Florence in the 1475, where the city is conceived as an harmonic and well-structured element, okay, and not as a wild growth of like a mushroom growth, like say wildly growing. So harmony, proportion, structure. That means also this time is the time of importance of political theories, right? So the theories as a government of the city. Okay, the city. Next. So what we see in this art representation is the heliocentrism. Heliocentrism means that the sun stays there and the earth and the other planets turns around him. This is a revolutionary idea because up to that time, up to Renaissance, the Galileo, Copernicus, it was believed that it's the sun who rotates, turns around the earth and the other planets. So this is very dangerous position, and Galileo paid also for supporting this position. The point is, once again, art comes into rescuing the thought, like he expresses ideas, okay, of a very powerful, and this is a new conception of the universe. That's what this is. At the same time, we have this resurgence, okay, of mathematics, of measurement, of scientific attitude, the observation. There is also critics already, in which you see the man can only know a fraction of reality if it limits itself to measurements, to geometry. In fact, there is all a word left out of the knowledge. So there is in this piece of art we see expression of limits. Knowledge as intended as a measurement and calculus, it's limited to a certain realm. There is all a world of emotion, feelings, hope, and whatever that is left out. So the limits of knowledge. Following to that, we have the resurgence, we have the appearance of what is the importance of reason, the era of Enlightenment. Voltaire is one of the main representatives. So here again, philosophy, here we have Voltaire and other philosophers sitting around a table and conversing. So that's where the rational discussion brings out philosophy, new thought, and new ideas, a new understanding. New understanding which are sometimes quite revolutionary. Again, this time they are revolutionary as in the politics side. See, this painting, it's the French Revolution is the Prise of the Bastille, 14th of July 1789. So knowledge is power. Okay, let's stop here.